60 CompTIA Security, plus interview question and answers. 60 real-world scenarios for freshers.
This video is designed to help freshers and entry-level candidates convert security plus knowledge into confident interview answers. These are not exam questions. These are real interview-style scenarios where interviewers want to see how you think, how you respond, and whether you understand security in practical terms.
What you'll get in this video:
we will cover a total of 60 interview-style question and answers, carefully structured so you are not overwhelmed. Each scenario stands on its own, and you can pause, revisit, or jump between sections as needed.
How the 60 question and answers are structured.
The 60 scenarios are divided into two logical parts of 30 question and answers each. This creates a clear learning progression, from interview thinking to real-world security judgment.
Part 1, Security plus Interview Foundations, 30 question and answers.
Part 1 focuses on how interviewers expect freshers to think about security. These scenarios build confidence and help you answer common entry-level interview questions clearly, even without job experience.
Part 1, Categories.
Category A, Everyday Security Situations, which are most asked 10 scenarios. Category B, Access, Identity, and Permissions, where freshers mostly gets wrong 10 scenarios. Category C, Threats, Malware, and Attacks, without fear-mongering in plain English 10 scenarios. Part 1 prepares you to answer interviews with clarity, confidence, and common-sense security reasoning.
Part 2, Real SOC and Operational Scenarios, 30 question and answers.
Part 2 shows how the same security plus concepts appear in real security operations. These scenarios reflect what happens once you are hired: alerts, user reports, and incidents that require calm and correct action.
Part 2, Categories.
Category D, Malware and Threat Recognition, 5 scenarios. Category E, Network and Traffic Security, 5 scenarios. Category F, Identity Abuse and Insider Risk, 5 scenarios. Category G, Incident Response Actions, 5 scenarios. Category H, Security Tools in Context, 5 scenarios. Category I, Governance Under Pressure, 5 scenarios. Part 2 helps you understand what the job actually looks like in a SOC or security team.
Let's begin with Category A, Everyday Security Situations.
We start with Category A because this is where almost every security interview begins. These scenarios test common-sense security judgment and how you respond to everyday situations.
Category A, Everyday Security Situations, 10 scenarios.
1. A user reports a suspicious email. What do you do first? 2. Someone clicked a phishing link but nothing happened. Now what? 3. An employee reused the same password everywhere. Why is this risky? 4. Why is using HTTP instead of HTTPS dangerous? 5. A laptop with company data is lost or stolen. What's the first response? 6. An employee shares credentials just once. Why is that a problem? 7. Why should USB drives be restricted in offices? 8. What is MFA and why is it better than passwords? 9. A user complains MFA is annoying. How do you respond? 10. Why are software updates considered a security control? Each scenario shows what most freshers say, why that answer sounds reasonable but fails, and the interview-winning response.
Category A, Everyday Security Situations.
These scenarios test common-sense security judgment. Interviewers use them to see how freshers think in real situations, not how many definitions they remember.
Scenario 1, Suspicious Email Reported by a User.
The interviewer asks, a user reports a suspicious email in their inbox. What is the first thing you would do?
What most freshers say.
Most freshers answer, I would delete the email and tell the user not to open it. This sounds reasonable, but it is a weak interview answer because it only fixes one inbox and ignores the possibility that the same email reached many users.
The interview-winning answer.
A stronger answer is, first, I would tell the user not to click any links or download anything. Then I would report the email so it can be analyzed and blocked for other users. After that, I would check if similar emails were delivered to others, because security attacks usually target more than one person.
Why this builds trust.
Interviewers trust this answer because it shows 1. You think beyond one user. 2. You focus on prevention, not just cleanup. 3. You understand how attacks spread inside organizations. Security is about stopping spread, not fixing one inbox.
Scenario 2, user clicked a phishing link but nothing happened.
The interviewer asks, A user says they clicked a phishing link but nothing seems to have happened. There are no pop-ups, no errors, and the system looks normal. What would you do next?
Well, most freshers say,
Most freshers answer, if nothing happened, I would tell the user not to worry and be careful next time. This is a weak answer because many attacks do not show immediate symptoms. Modern attacks are designed to stay hidden.
the interview-winning answer.
A stronger answer is, even if nothing happened, I would treat this as a potential security incident. I would advise the user to disconnect from the network, reset their password, and report the incident so logs can be checked. Just because nothing is visible does not mean the system is safe.
Why this builds trust.
Interviewers trust this answer because it shows 1. You understand attacks can be silent at first. 2. You do not rely only on visible symptoms. 3. You prioritize caution over assumptions in security. Silence after a click is not reassurance, it is uncertainty.
Scenario 3. An employee reuses the same password everywhere.
The interviewer asks, you find out that an employee uses the same password for email, work applications, and even personal websites. Why is this a security risk, and how would you explain it?
Well, most freshers say,
Most freshers answer, if one password is strong, it should be fine. This is a weak answer because it assumes attackers target only one system at a time. In reality, attackers reuse leaked passwords across many services.
the interview-winning answer.
A stronger answer is, reusing passwords is risky because if one website is breached, attackers can try the same password on company systems. This can lead to multiple accounts being compromised from a single leak. Each system should have a unique password to limit damage.
Why this builds trust.
Interviewers trust this answer because it shows 1. You understand how credential leaks are reused. 2. You think in terms of blast radius, not single failures. 3. You can explain security risks in simple language. Password reuse turns small leaks into large breaches.
Scenario 4. Why using HTTP instead of HTTPS is dangerous.
The interviewer asks, why is using HTTP instead of HTTPS considered insecure, especially on public or shared networks?
Well, most freshers say,
Most freshers answer, HTTPS is more secure than HTTP. While this is true, it is a weak interview answer because it does not explain what actually goes wrong when HTTP is used or why attackers benefit from it.
the interview-winning answer.
A stronger answer is, HTTP sends data in plain text, which means anyone on the same network can read or modify the traffic. HTTPS encrypts the data and verifies the server identity, which prevents attackers from stealing credentials or changing information in transit.
Why this builds trust.
Interviewers trust this answer because it shows 1. You understand how data can be intercepted in transit. 2. You can explain encryption without technical jargon. 3. You connect security risks to real user behavior. Unencrypted traffic turns networks into open eavesdropping zones.
Scenario 5. A laptop with company data is lost or stolen.
The interviewer asks, an employee reports that their laptop containing company data has been lost or stolen. What is the first thing you would do?
Well, most freshers say,
Most freshers answer, I would try to find the laptop or wait to see if it is returned. This is a weak answer because time matters in security incidents, and assuming the device will come back delays containment.
the interview-winning answer.
A stronger answer is, I would immediately report the incident so access can be revoked, passwords can be reset, and the device can be remotely locked or wiped if possible. The priority is to protect company data, not to recover the device first.
Why this builds trust.
Interviewers trust this answer because it shows 1. You understand containment comes before recovery. 2. You act quickly to reduce risk exposure. 3. You focus on protecting data, not hardware in security incidents. Protecting data matters more than retrieving devices.
Scenario 6. An employee shares credentials just once.
The interviewer asks, you discover that an employee shared their login credentials with a colleague just once to get work done faster. Why is this a security problem?
Well, most freshers say,
Most freshers answer, if they trust each other and it was only once, it should be okay. This is a weak answer because it treats credentials as personal favors instead of security controls tied to accountability.
The interview-winning answer.
A stronger answer is, sharing credentials breaks accountability. If something goes wrong, we cannot know who actually performed an action. It also increases the risk of misuse or compromise because passwords spread beyond the intended user.
Why this builds trust.
Interviewers trust this answer because it shows 1. You understand accountability and traceability. 2. You recognize that trust does not replace security controls. 3. You think about long-term risk, not short-term convenience. Credentials are identities, not favors to share.
Scenario 7. Why USB drives should be restricted in offices.
The interviewer asks, why do many organizations restrict or completely block the use of USB drives in offices?
What most freshers say.
Most freshers answer, USB drives can contain viruses. While this is partly true, it is a weak interview answer because it stops at a surface-level risk and does not explain how serious and widespread the threat can be.
The interview-winning answer.
A stronger answer is, USB drives are risky because they can introduce malware into secure systems without using the network. Attackers can use infected USBs to bypass firewalls and security controls, and even well-meaning employees can accidentally spread infections between systems.
Why this builds trust.
Interviewers trust this answer because it shows 1. You understand that threats can bypass network defenses. 2. You recognize human behavior as part of security risk. 3. You can explain physical attack vectors clearly. Physical access often bypasses the strongest digital defenses.
Scenario 8. What is MFA and why is it better than passwords?
The interviewer asks, what is multi-factor authentication, and why do organizations prefer it over just using passwords?
What most freshers say.
Most freshers answer, MFA adds an extra layer of security. This is a weak interview answer because it repeats a common phrase without explaining what problem MFA actually solves.
The interview-winning answer.
A stronger answer is, passwords can be guessed, reused, or stolen through phishing. MFA adds a second requirement, like a phone approval or code, so even if a password is compromised, an attacker still cannot log in without the second factor.
Why this builds trust.
Interviewers trust this answer because it shows 1. You understand passwords are a weak single point of failure. 2. You can explain MFA in practical, real-world terms. 3. You focus on reducing damage from inevitable password leaks. MFA assumes passwords will fail and plans for it.
Scenario 9. A user complains MF is annoying.
The interviewer asks, a user complains that multi-factor authentication is annoying and slows down their work. How would you respond to this concern?
What most freshers say.
Most freshers answer, security is important, so they should just accept it. This is a weak interview answer because it dismisses the user's experience and shows no understanding of how security and usability must coexist.
The interview-winning answer.
A stronger answer is, I would explain that MFA protects their account even if their password is stolen, which is very common today. I would also reassure them that while it adds a small extra step, it prevents much bigger problems like account takeovers and data loss.
Why this builds trust.
Interviewers trust this answer because it shows 1. You respect user concerns instead of dismissing them. 2. You can explain security controls in business-friendly terms. 3. You understand security is a balance between protection and usability. Good security explains itself instead of forcing compliance.
Scenario 10. Why software updates are considered a security control.
The interviewer asks, why do security teams treat regular software updates and patching as an important security control?
What most freshers say.
Most freshers answer, updates fix bugs and add new features. This is a weak interview answer because it ignores the security purpose of updates and focuses only on functionality.
The interview-winning answer.
A stronger answer is, software updates often fix known security vulnerabilities. If systems are not updated, attackers can exploit these known weaknesses to gain access. Regular patching reduces the number of known entry points attackers can use.
Why this builds trust.
Interviewers trust this answer because it shows 1. You understand attackers exploit known vulnerabilities. 2. You see patching as prevention, not maintenance. 3. You connect routine tasks to real security risk reduction. Unpatched systems are invitations, not accidents.
Category A complete, what you should take away.
Category A focused on everyday security situations that interviewers use to judge common sense security thinking. These questions are not about tools or experience. They test whether you can recognize risk, think beyond one user, and respond calmly. If you can answer these clearly, you already stand out from most freshers.
Please check description or comment section of this video. I have given a lot of links for downloading 6 PDFs containing all types of most asked interview question and answers like scenario-based, technical-based, behavioral-based, real-world problem-solving, generally most asked, and system design. Required for your cybersecurity jobs interviews like Junior Cybersecurity Analyst jobs, Cybersecurity Analyst jobs, Cybersecurity SOC Analyst jobs, Cybersecurity GRC jobs, Cybersecurity CISO jobs, Cybersecurity Incident Responder jobs, Cybersecurity Vulnerability Analyst jobs, Cybersecurity Malware Analyst jobs, Cybersecurity Engineer jobs, Cybersecurity Architect jobs, Cybersecurity Manager jobs, Cybersecurity Consultant jobs, Cybersecurity Specialist jobs, etc., etc. These questions and answers are carefully curated by industry experts, saving you people hours of research and ensuring you people will have the most accurate and relevant answers. This PDFs includes scenario-based questions and answers, real-world problem solving, interview questions and answers where almost 80% of the people are failing to answer, system design questions and answers where almost 90% of the people are failing to answer, with detailed solutions, which are often missing from free online resources. A lot of people are claiming that these questions are coming in real interviews. So, grab them as soon as possible with both hands. Since these questions and answers covers basic to advanced interview questions and answers, that's why given 50 question and answers for each section, these questions and answers will be helpful for freshers, 2 to 3 years experienced people, and 5 or above years experienced people also for your interviews. You people can download all 6 PDFs in a single zip file from below given links.
Category B, access, identity, and permissions.
We now move to Category B, where interviews become stricter. These scenarios focus on who should have access to what and why. Many security incidents start with poor access control, so interviewers use these questions to test accountability, misuse risk, and whether you understand how access decisions protect the organization.
Category B, access, identity, and permissions, 10 scenarios.
1. Why shouldn't everyone be an admin? 2. What is least privilege in simple terms? 3. A former employee still has access. What went wrong? 4. Why shared accounts are a security risk? 5. What's the difference between authentication and authorization? 6. Why should access be reviewed regularly? 7. What happens if MF is disabled temporarily? 8. Why is role-based access better than manual permissions? 9. What is a service account and why is it sensitive? 10. Why do companies log login attempts? These scenarios test whether you understand accountability, access misuse, and how identity decisions prevent security incidents.
Scenario 11, why shouldn't everyone be an admin?
The interviewer asks, why can't we just make everyone an admin so work becomes faster and easier?
What most freshers say.
Most freshers answer, admins can do more things, so it helps productivity. This is a weak answer because it focuses only on convenience and ignores how much damage admin access can cause if misused or compromised.
The interview-winning answer.
A stronger answer is, admin access allows users to change critical system settings. If everyone is an admin, a single mistake or compromised account can affect the entire system. Limiting admin access reduces risk and limits damage if an account is misused.
Why this builds trust.
Interviewers trust this answer because it shows 1. You understand the impact of privilege misuse. 2. You think in terms of risk reduction, not convenience. 3. You recognize that access control limits blast radius. More access increases speed and multiplies damage when things go wrong.
Scenario 12, what is least privilege in simple terms?
The interviewer asks, can you explain what least privilege means in simple terms and why it is important?
What most freshers say.
Most freshers answer, least privilege means giving less access. This is a weak interview answer because it sounds memorized and does not explain how least privilege actually reduces risk in real situations.
The interview-winning answer.
A stronger answer is, least privilege means giving users only the access they need to do their job and nothing more. This way, if an account is misused or compromised, the damage is limited instead of affecting the whole system.
Why this builds trust.
Interviewers trust this answer because it shows 1. You understand access control as risk containment. 2. You think about compromised scenarios, not ideal behavior. 3. You can explain security principles without jargon. Least privilege assumes mistakes and limits their impact.
Scenario 13. A former employee still has access. What went wrong?
The interviewer asks, you discover that a former employee still has access to company systems weeks after leaving. What went wrong, and why is this dangerous?
What most freshers say.
Most freshers answer, someone forgot to remove the account. This is a weak interview answer because it treats the issue as a simple mistake instead of a broken process.
The interview-winning answer.
A stronger answer is, this means the offboarding process failed. Access should be removed immediately when an employee leaves. If accounts stay active, former employees can intentionally or accidentally access sensitive data, creating serious security and compliance risks.
Why this builds trust.
Interviewers trust this answer because it shows 1. You understand access removal as a formal process. 2. You recognize insider risk after employment ends. 3. You think in terms of prevention, not blame. Access that outlives employment is an open door.
Scenario 14. Why shared accounts are a security risk.
The interviewer asks, some teams use shared accounts like team@company.com to make work easier. Why is this considered a security risk?
What most freshers say.
Most freshers answer, shared accounts are risky because many people know the password. This is a weak interview answer because it stops at password secrecy and misses the deeper accountability problem.
The interview-winning answer.
A stronger answer is, shared accounts remove accountability. If something goes wrong, we cannot identify who performed the action. This makes investigations difficult and increases insider risk. Individual accounts ensure actions can be traced to a specific person.
Why this builds trust.
Interviewers trust this answer because it shows 1. You understand accountability as a security control. 2. You think about investigation and audit requirements. 3. You recognize insider risk beyond external attack. Security without accountability is guesswork.
Scenario 15. Authentication versus authorization. What's the difference?
The interviewer asks, can you explain the difference between authentication and authorization, and why both are important?
What most freshers say.
Most freshers answer, authentication is login and authorization is permissions. This is a weak interview answer because it sounds memorized and does not show understanding of how the two work together in real systems.
The interview-winning answer.
A stronger answer is, authentication confirms who you are, like checking your username and password. Authorization decides what you are allowed to do after you are logged in. Both are needed because knowing who you are does not automatically mean you should have access to everything.
Why this builds trust.
Interviewers trust this answer because it shows 1. You understand identity and permission as separate steps. 2. You can explain core security concepts clearly. 3. You avoid mixing technical terms. Incorrectly knowing who you are is different from knowing what you can do.
Scenario 16. Why should access be reviewed regularly?
The interviewer asks, why do companies review user access regularly instead of setting it once and leaving it alone?
What most freshers say.
Most freshers answer, to make sure people still need access. This is a weak interview answer because it is vague and does not explain what actually changes over time or why stale access is dangerous.
The interview-winning answer.
A stronger answer is, roles and responsibilities change over time. If access is not reviewed, users may keep permissions they no longer need. This increases the risk of misuse, mistakes, or abuse if an account is compromised.
Why this builds trust.
Interviewers trust this answer because it shows 1. You understand access creep as a real risk. 2. You think about security over time, not just setup. 3. You recognize reviews as prevention, not bureaucracy. Unused access is hidden exposure.
Scenario 17. What happens if MFA is disabled temporarily?
The interviewer asks, Sometimes teams disable MF temporarily to fix an issue or help a user. What are the risks of doing this, even for a short time?
Well, most freshers say.
Most freshers answer, it is okay if it is only temporary. This is a weak interview answer because it assumes attackers will not take advantage of short security gaps.
The interview-winning answer.
A stronger answer is, disabling MF removes an important protection layer. Even a short window is enough for attackers to log in using stolen passwords. Temporary exceptions often become permanent or are forgotten, increasing long-term risk.
Why this builds trust.
Interviewers trust this answer because it shows 1. You understand attackers exploit short gaps. 2. You treat MF as a critical control, not an option. 3. You think about operational shortcuts becoming risks. Temporary security gaps are permanent opportunities for attackers.
Scenario 18. Why is role-based access better than manual permissions?
The interviewer asks, why do organizations prefer role-based access control instead of assigning permissions manually to each user?
Well, most freshers say.
Most freshers answer, roles are easier to manage. This is a weak interview answer because it focuses only on convenience and does not explain how role-based access improves security.
The interview-winning answer.
A stronger answer is, role-based access ensures users get consistent permissions based on their job function. This reduces mistakes, prevents over-permissioning, and makes access changes faster and safer when people join, move roles, or leave the organization.
Why this builds trust.
Interviewers trust this answer because it shows 1. You understand consistency as a security advantage. 2. You recognize human error in manual permission assignment. 3. You think about access at organizational scale. Consistency reduces risk faster than manual control.
Scenario 19. What is a service account and why is it sensitive?
The interviewer asks, what is a service account and why do security teams treat service accounts as sensitive?
Well, most freshers say.
Most freshers answer, service accounts are used by applications. This is a weak interview answer because it explains usage but not risk.
The interview-winning answer.
A stronger answer is, service accounts are used by applications or services to communicate automatically. They are sensitive because they often have high privileges and do not change passwords frequently. If compromised, attackers can move silently without triggering user alerts.
Why this builds trust.
Interviewers trust this answer because it shows 1. You understand non-human identities are high-value targets. 2. You recognize long-lived credentials as a risk. 3. You think about stealthy attacker behavior. Silent accounts create silent breaches.
Scenario 20. Why do companies log login attempts?
The interviewer asks, why do companies log login attempts, even when the login is successful and nothing seems wrong?
Well, most freshers say.
Most freshers answer, logs are kept in case something bad happens. This is a weak interview answer because it is vague and does not explain how login logs are actually used in real security investigations.
The interview-winning answer.
A stronger answer is, login logs help detect suspicious behavior like repeated failed attempts, logins from unusual locations, or access outside normal hours. Even successful logins can indicate an attack if the pattern looks abnormal.
Why this builds trust.
Interviewers trust this answer because it shows 1. You understand security is about patterns, not single events. 2. You see logs as a detection and investigation tool. 3. You recognize that successful logins can still be malicious. Visibility is the foundation of detection.
Category B complete. What you should take away.
Category B focused on access, identity, and permissions, where many real-world breaches begin. These scenarios showed how small identity decisions, if ignored, quietly create long-term risk. Interviewers use these questions to check whether you think in terms of accountability, misuse, and prevention.
Please check description or comment section of this video. I have given a lot of links for downloading 6 PDFs containing all types of most asked interview question and answers like scenario-based, technical-based, behavioral-based, real-world problem-solving, generally most asked, and system design. Required for your cybersecurity jobs interviews like Junior Cybersecurity Analyst jobs, Cybersecurity Analyst jobs, Cybersecurity SOC Analyst jobs, Cybersecurity GRC jobs, Cybersecurity CISO jobs, Cybersecurity Incident Responder jobs, Cybersecurity Vulnerability Analyst jobs, Cybersecurity Malware Analyst jobs, Cybersecurity Engineer jobs, Cybersecurity Architect jobs, Cybersecurity Manager jobs, Cybersecurity Consultant jobs, Cybersecurity Specialist jobs, etc., etc. These questions and answers are carefully curated by industry experts, saving you people hours of research and ensuring you people will have the most accurate and relevant answers. This PDFs includes scenario-based questions and answers, real-world problem solving, interview questions and answers where almost 80% of the people are failing to answer, system design questions and answers where almost 90% of the people are failing to answer, with detailed solutions, which are often missing from free online resources. A lot of people are claiming that these questions are coming in real interviews. So, grab them as soon as possible with both hands. Since these questions and answers covers basic to advanced interview questions and answers, that's why given 50 question and answers for each section. These questions and answers will be helpful for freshers, 2 to 3 years experienced people, and 5 or above years experienced people also for your interviews. You people can download all 6 PDFs in a single zip file from below given links.
Up next, Category C threats, malware and attacks.
In Category C, we shift from access mistakes to active threats. These scenarios test whether you can recognize malware, phishing, and attacks early without panic, jargon, or overreaction. Next, we'll start with the most basic but misunderstood question: what malware really is.
Category C threats, malware and attacks.
This category focuses on understanding common cyber threats without fear or excessive technical depth. Interviewers want to see whether you can recognize attacks early, explain them clearly, and respond calmly. These questions test awareness, not panic.
Category C scenarios, 10 scenarios.
1. What is malware in simple terms? 2. How is ransomware different from a virus? 3. Why are email attachments dangerous? 4. What is social engineering with a real example? 5. Why is public Wi-Fi risky? 6. How does a weak password lead to a breach? 7. What is a brute force attack in plain language? 8. Why do attackers scan ports? 9. What is a 0 day without technical depth? 10. Why is nothing happened, yet a dangerous assumption? These scenarios test whether you can identify threats early and explain risks clearly without overcomplicating them.
Scenario 21. What is malware in simple terms?
The interviewer asks, can you explain what malware is in simple terms without using too much technical language?
What most freshers say.
Most freshers answer, malware is a virus that damages computers. This is a weak interview answer because it oversimplifies malware and shows limited understanding of how different malicious programs behave.
The interview-winning answer.
A stronger answer is, malware is any software designed to harm, spy on, or gain unauthorized access to a system. It can steal data, slow down systems, or give attackers control, often without the user noticing immediately.
Why this builds trust?
Interviewers trust this answer because it shows 1. You understand malware as a broad category, not just viruses. 2. You can explain threats in simple, accurate language. 3. You recognize that malware often hides silently. Malware succeeds most when users don't realize it's there.
Scenario 22. How is ransomware different from a virus?
The interviewer asks, can you explain how ransomware is different from a traditional computer virus?
What most freshers say.
Most freshers answer, ransomware locks files and viruses damage systems. This is a weak interview answer because it describes symptoms but does not explain the attacker's goal or why ransomware is especially dangerous to organizations.
The interview-winning answer.
A stronger answer is, a virus spreads to disrupt or damage systems, often without a clear financial goal. Ransomware is designed specifically to make money by encrypting data and demanding payment. It targets availability and business operations rather than just system damage.
Why this builds trust?
Interviewers trust this answer because it shows 1. You understand attacker motivation, not just technical effects. 2. You can explain business impact clearly. 3. You recognize availability as a core security pillar. Ransomware attacks businesses by stopping work, not just breaking machines.
Scenario 23. Why are email attachments dangerous?
The interviewer asks, why are email attachments considered dangerous, even when they come from someone you know?
Well, most freshers say,
Most freshers answer, attachments can contain viruses. This is a weak interview answer because it does not explain how attackers use trust and file types to bypass user caution.
the interview-winning answer.
A stronger answer is, email attachments can contain hidden malicious code. Attackers often compromise one account and then send infected files to trusted contacts. When the attachment is opened, malware can execute without obvious warnings.
Why this builds trust?
Interviewers trust this answer because it shows 1. You understand trust exploitation in attacks. 2. You recognize that known senders can still be compromised. 3. You can explain risk beyond simple virus definitions. Trust is the most abused vulnerability in email attacks.
Scenario 24. What is social engineering? With a real example.
The interviewer asks, can you explain what social engineering is, using a real-world example?
Well, most freshers say,
Most freshers answer, social engineering is hacking people. This is a weak interview answer because it is vague and does not show how attackers actually manipulate human behavior.
the interview-winning answer.
A stronger answer is, social engineering is when attackers manipulate people into giving information or access. For example, an attacker might pretend to be IT support and ask a user to share their login details to fix an urgent issue.
Why this builds trust?
Interviewers trust this answer because it shows 1. You understand attacks target people, not just systems. 2. You can explain manipulation using everyday situations. 3. You recognize urgency and authority as common attacker tactics. People are often the easiest entry point into secure systems.
Scenario 25. Why is public Wi-Fi risky?
The interviewer asks, why do security teams warn users about connecting to public Wi-Fi networks like those in cafes or airports?
Well, most freshers say,
Most freshers answer, public Wi-Fi is not secure. This is a weak interview answer because it states a fact without explaining what attackers can actually do on these networks.
the interview-winning answer.
A stronger answer is, public Wi-Fi networks are shared and often unencrypted. Attackers on the same network can intercept traffic, redirect users to fake websites, or perform man-in-the-middle attacks to steal credentials and data.
Why this builds trust?
Interviewers trust this answer because it shows 1. You understand how shared networks expose traffic. 2. You can explain real attacker techniques without jargon. 3. You connect everyday behavior to real security risks. Convenience often hides the highest risk.
Scenario 26. How does a weak password lead to a breach?
The interviewer asks, how can a weak password actually lead to a full security breach? Walk me through the thinking.
Well, most freshers say,
Most freshers answer, weak passwords are easy to guess. This is a weak interview answer because it stops at guessing and does not explain how attackers systematically exploit weak credentials.
the interview-winning answer.
A stronger answer is, attackers use automated tools to try common or leaked passwords across many accounts. If one account is compromised, attackers can move laterally, access more systems, and escalate privileges, turning a single weak password into a full breach.
Why this builds trust?
Interviewers trust this answer because it shows 1. You understand automation in modern attacks. 2. You think beyond single account compromise. 3. You recognize lateral movement as a real threat. Most breaches start small and grow quietly.
Scenario 27. What is a brute force attack in plain language?
The interviewer asks, can you explain what a brute force attack is, in simple terms, without using technical jargon?
Well, most freshers say,
Most freshers answer, it is when hackers try many passwords. This is a weak interview answer because it is technically correct but does not explain why brute force attacks are still effective today.
the interview-winning answer.
A stronger answer is, a brute force attack is when attackers use automated tools to try thousands or millions of password combinations very quickly. Weak or reused passwords make these attacks successful, especially when there are no login limits or account lockouts.
Why this builds trust?
Interviewers trust this answer because it shows 1. You understand automation makes attacks scalable. 2. You connect password strength to real attack success. 3. You recognize missing protections like rate-limiting attackers don't guess, they automate.
Scenario 28. Why do attackers scan ports?
The interviewer asks, why do attackers scan ports on systems before launching an attack?
What most freshers say.
Most freshers answer, to see which ports are open. This is a weak interview answer because it describes the action but not the attacker's reasoning or next steps.
The interview-winning answer.
A stronger answer is, port scanning helps attackers discover which services are running on a system. Each open port may expose a service with known vulnerabilities, misconfigurations, or weak authentication that attackers can exploit.
Why this builds trust?
Interviewers trust this answer because it shows 1. You understand reconnaissance as the first attack step. 2. You connect open ports to expose services. 3. You recognize scanning as preparation, not the attack itself. Every open port is a question attackers try to answer.
Scenario 29. What is a zero-day? Without technical depth.
The interviewer asks, what is a zero-day vulnerability? Explained simply.
What most freshers say.
Most freshers answer, a zero-day is a very dangerous bug. This is a weak interview answer because it labels the risk without explaining why it is dangerous or what makes it different from other vulnerabilities.
The interview-winning answer.
A stronger answer is, a zero-day is a vulnerability that is unknown to the software vendor and has no patch yet. Attackers can exploit it before defenders even know it exists, which makes detection and prevention much harder.
Why this builds trust?
Interviewers trust this answer because it shows 1. You understand timing as the key risk factor. 2. You recognize why patches cannot help immediately. 3. You explain advanced threats in simple terms. 0 days are dangerous because defenders start blind.
Scenario 30. Why is nothing happened yet a dangerous assumption?
The interviewer asks, a user reports a suspicious action but there are no alerts, no errors and nothing visibly wrong. Why is assuming nothing happened dangerous?
What most freshers say.
Most freshers answer, if there are no alerts or issues, then it's probably fine. This is a weak interview answer because it assumes attacks are loud and immediate, which is rarely true in real-world incidents.
The interview-winning answer.
A stronger answer is, many attacks are designed to stay hidden. Just because there are no alerts yet does not mean the system is safe. Early investigation, log review and monitoring are important to catch delayed or silent activity before damage appears.
Why this builds trust?
Interviewers trust this answer because it shows 1. You understand attackers aim to stay unnoticed. 2. You do not rely only on alerts to judge security. 3. You think proactively instead of reactively in security. Silence is not proof of safety.
Category C complete. What you should take away.
Category C focused on understanding threats, malware, and attacks without panic or jargon. These scenarios showed how early awareness and calm reasoning prevent small issues from becoming major incidents. Interviewers use these questions to identify candidates who can think clearly under uncertainty.
Final takeaway. Why this part 1 of this series works.
Across all 3 categories, the goal was simple. Show common mistakes, explain why they fail, and give interview-winning answers that reflect real-world security thinking. If you can explain these scenarios clearly, you demonstrate readiness not just for interviews, but for real security roles.
Please check description or comment section of this video. I have given a lot of links for downloading 6 PDFs containing all types of most asked interview question and answers like scenario-based, technical-based, behavioral-based, real-world problem-solving, generally most asked and system design. Required for your cybersecurity jobs interviews like Junior Cybersecurity Analyst jobs, Cybersecurity Analyst jobs, Cybersecurity SOC Analyst jobs, Cybersecurity GRC jobs, Cybersecurity CISO jobs, Cybersecurity Incident Responder jobs, Cybersecurity Vulnerability Analyst jobs, Cybersecurity Malware Analyst jobs, Cybersecurity Engineer jobs, Cybersecurity Architect jobs, Cybersecurity Manager jobs, Cybersecurity Consultant jobs, Cybersecurity Specialist jobs, etc., etc. These questions and answers are carefully curated by industry experts, saving you people hours of research and ensuring you people will have the most accurate and relevant answers. This PDFs includes scenario-based questions and answers, real-world problem solving. Interview questions and answers where almost 80% of the people are failing to answer. System design questions and answers where almost 90% of the people are failing to answer, with detailed solutions, which are often missing from free online resources. A lot of people are claiming that these questions are coming in real interviews. So, grab them as soon as possible with both hands. Since these questions and answers covers basic to advanced interview questions and answers, that's why given 50 question and answers for each section. These questions and answers will be helpful for freshers, 2 to 3 years experienced people, and 5 or above years experienced people also for your interviews. You people can download all 6 PDFs in a single zip file from below given links.
Part 2, From Security Knowledge to SOC Readiness.
In Part 2, we move from awareness to action. These scenarios reflect what entry-level SOC analysts and security teams actually deal with. Interviewers use these questions to see if you can respond calmly, prioritize correctly, and avoid making incidents worse.
Part 2, Categories. 30 scenarios total, with 5 scenarios for each category.
Category D, Malware and Threats, the what is this? Phase. Category E, Network Security, the how does it move? Phase. Category F, Identity and Access, IAM. Category G, Incident Response, the action phase. Category H, Tools and Technology, the hard skills phase. Category I, Governance and Security Rules. Each category builds practical SOC thinking without overwhelming freshers with advanced theory.
Category D, Malware and Threats.
This category tests whether you can recognize common threats quickly and respond correctly. These are the situations where panic causes mistakes. Interviewers want to see if you can identify the threat and take the right first action.
Category D scenarios, 5 scenarios.
1. The slow PC, fan spinning high and a strange process running crypto mining malware. 2. The ransomware screen, files won't open and a ransom note appears. 3. The phishing email, a VIP user clicked a link and entered credentials. 4. The strange USB, a USB drive found in the parking lot is plugged in. 5. The Wi-Fi warning, certificate error on coffee shop Wi-Fi. These scenarios focus on identification and containment, the most critical early SOC skills.
Scenario 31, the slow PC with loud fans.
The interviewer asks, a user complains that their PC has become very slow, the fans are always spinning loudly, and Task Manager shows a strange process consuming a lot of CPU. There are no pop-ups or alerts. What do you think is happening?
What freshers usually say.
Most freshers answer, the PC might have a virus, so I would run antivirus or restart the system. This is a weak answer because it reacts to slowness, but does not explain why the system is slow or what kind of threat could cause this behavior.
The interview-winning SOC analyst answer.
A stronger answer explains both the symptom and the threat one. High CPU usage with constant fan noise can indicate crypto mining malware running in the background. 2. Crypto miners abuse system resources to mine cryptocurrency without the user's knowledge. 3. The correct first action is to isolate the system from the network and escalate for malware investigation. Explaining the behavior shows understanding, not guesswork.
Follow-up 1. Why doesn't crypto mining malware usually show pop-ups or alerts?
Answer, because attackers want the malware to stay hidden. Loud pop-ups would alert the user, but silent CPU abuse can continue for a long time without detection.
Follow-up 2. Why is restarting the PC not a real solution?
Answer, restarting may temporarily stop the process, but the malware often restarts itself. The root cause remains unless the system is properly investigated and cleaned.
Follow-up 3. Curveball. What if the user says this started right after installing free software?
Answer, that increases suspicion. Free or pirated software often bundles hidden malware. This context helps confirm the crypto mining hypothesis and guides investigation.
Key takeaway.
Not all malware locks files or shows warnings. Some attacks quietly steal resources. Interviewers want to see if you can recognize silent threats, not just obvious ones.
Up next, when malware stops hiding.
Next, we move from silent abuse to an obvious crisis. Instead of a slow system, the user's files are suddenly locked and ransom is demanded. This scenario tests whether you know the single most important first action during a ransomware attack.
Scenario 32, the ransomware screen.
The interviewer asks, A user calls the help desk in panic. Their files won't open, file extensions have changed to lock, and there is a ransom note asking for cryptocurrency. What is your very first action?
What freshers usually say.
Most freshers answer, run antivirus, try to recover the files, or format the system. This is a weak interview answer because it jumps straight to fixing the machine instead of stopping the incident from getting worse.
The interview-winning SOC analyst answer.
A strong SOC analyst answer prioritizes containment over recovery. 1. Immediately disconnect the system from the network to stop the ransomware from spreading. 2. Isolate the affected machine from shared drives and other systems. 3. Escalate to the incident response team and preserve evidence for investigation. If you say isolation first, you demonstrate real incident handling judgment.
Follow-up 1. Why is disconnecting from the network more important than running antivirus?
Answer: because ransomware often spreads to file servers and shared drives. Disconnecting first prevents further damage, while antivirus actions can wait until the threat is contained.
Follow-up 2. Should the system be powered off immediately?
Answer: not always. Powering off can destroy volatile evidence. Isolating the system without shutting it down preserves evidence while stopping the spread.
Follow-up 3. Curveball. What if the user says they already paid the ransom?
Answer: even then, the system must remain isolated. Payment does not guarantee full recovery, and attackers may have installed additional backdoors that require investigation.
Key takeaway.
Ransomware incidents test prioritization under pressure. Interviewers want to hear containment first, not cleanup. Stopping the spread protects the entire organization.
Up next, when credentials are already compromised.
Next, we look at a scenario where damage isn't visible on the screen, but access has already been handed to the attacker through a phishing attack.
Scenario 33. The phishing email VIP entered credentials.
The interviewer asks, a VIP user reports they clicked a phishing link and entered their username and password. There are no alerts yet. What do you do next?
What freshers usually say.
Most freshers answer, I would tell the user to change their password. This is a weak interview answer because it treats this as a simple password issue and ignores the possibility that the attacker already used the credentials.
The interview-winning SOC analyst answer.
A strong SOC analyst answer assumes compromise and acts immediately. 1. Immediately reset the user's password and invalidate all active sessions. 2. Check login logs for unusual locations, devices, or times to see if the credentials were already abused. 3. Enable or enforce MF if it is not already active and escalate the incident for investigation. Credential exposure is an incident, not a warning.
Follow-up 1. Why do we assume the credentials are already compromised?
Answer: because attackers often use stolen credentials immediately or sell them quickly. Waiting for alerts gives attackers more time to cause damage.
Follow-up 2. Why are login logs important even if nothing looks wrong?
Answer: logs can reveal silent access, such as logins from unusual countries or devices, that the user would never notice.
Follow-up 3. Curveball. What if the user says they use the same password on other sites?
Answer: that increases risk significantly. Other accounts may already be compromised, so the incident may extend beyond just the company system.
Key takeaway.
Phishing incidents are about speed and assumption. Interviewers want to hear that you treat credential entry as an active compromise, not a future risk.
Up next, when curiosity becomes the attack vector.
Next, we examine a scenario where no email was involved at all, just a USB drive and human curiosity.
Scenario 34. The strange USB in the parking lot.
The interviewer asks, an employee finds a USB drive in the parking lot and plugs it into their work computer to see what's inside. What security issue is this, and what should be done?
What freshers usually say.
Most freshers answer, scan the USB with antivirus and delete any suspicious files. This is a weak answer because it assumes the danger is only visible files and ignores how USB devices can execute attacks automatically.
The interview-winning SOC analyst answer.
A strong SOC analyst answer focuses on prevention and awareness. 1. This is a social engineering attack known as a USB drop. 2. The USB should never be plugged into a work system and must be handed over to IT or security. 3. The affected computer should be isolated and checked, since the USB may have already executed malicious code. Human curiosity is often the real vulnerability attackers exploit.
Follow-up 1. Why is antivirus scanning not enough for USB attacks?
Answer: because USB devices can emulate keyboards or network cards and execute commands automatically, which antivirus may not immediately detect.
Follow-up 2. Why do attackers leave USB drives in public places?
Answer: they rely on curiosity. People are likely to plug in a USB to see what's inside, unknowingly triggering the attack.
Follow-up 3. Curveball. What if the USB has a company logo on it?
Answer: that makes the attack more convincing. Attackers often add branding to increase trust and improve success rates.
Key takeaway.
Not all attacks arrive by email. Physical access and human behavior are powerful attack vectors that interviewers expect you to recognize.
Up next, when the network itself cannot be trusted.
Next, we explore a situation where the threat isn't the device or the user, but the network they are connected to.
Scenario 35. The Wi-Fi certificate warning.
The interviewer asks, a user connects to public Wi-Fi at a coffee shop and sees a warning saying certificate invalid when opening a website. They ignore it and continue. What security risk does this indicate, and what should the user do?
What freshers usually say.
Most freshers answer, public Wi-Fi is risky, so the user should avoid it. This is a weak interview answer because it identifies the risk but does not explain what the warning actually means or how an attack could be happening.
The interview-winning SOC Analyst answer.
A strong SOC Analyst answer explains the threat and the action one. The certificate warning suggests a possible man-in-the-middle attack. 2. An attacker may be intercepting traffic to steal credentials or session data. 3. The correct action is to stop using the network immediately and avoid logging into any accounts. Certificate warnings are security signals, not browser errors.
Follow-up 1. Why is ignoring certificate warnings dangerous?
Answer: because certificates verify the identity of the website. Ignoring the warning means the user may be sending data directly to an attacker.
Follow-up 2. Would using a VPN make this safe?
Answer: a VPN can encrypt traffic and reduce risk, but users should still avoid entering sensitive information on untrusted networks.
Follow-up 3. Curveball. What if the warning appears on a site the user visits every day?
Answer: that is even more suspicious. It may indicate a fake access point or network spoofing, and the user should disconnect immediately.
Key takeaway.
Public networks remove trust from the connection. Interviewers want to hear that you understand how attackers exploit that lack of trust.
Category 1 complete. From silent threats to obvious attacks.
You've now covered how malware and threats appear in different forms: silent resource abuse, loud ransomware, stolen credentials, physical bait, and unsafe networks. Together, these scenarios test whether you can recognize threats before real damage spreads.
Please check description or comment section of this video. I have given a lot of links for downloading 6 PDFs containing all types of most asked interview question and answers like scenario-based, technical-based, behavioral-based, real-world problem-solving, generally most asked, and system design. Required for your cybersecurity jobs interviews like Junior Cybersecurity Analyst jobs, Cybersecurity Analyst jobs, Cybersecurity SOC Analyst jobs, Cybersecurity GRC jobs, Cybersecurity CISO jobs, Cybersecurity Incident Responder jobs, Cybersecurity Vulnerability Analyst jobs, Cybersecurity Malware Analyst jobs, Cybersecurity Engineer jobs, Cybersecurity Architect jobs, Cybersecurity Manager jobs, Cybersecurity Consultant jobs, Cybersecurity Specialist jobs, etc., etc. These questions and answers are carefully curated by industry experts, saving you people hours of research and ensuring you people will have the most accurate and relevant answers. This PDFs includes scenario-based questions and answers, real-world problem solving, interview questions and answers where almost 80% of the people are failing to answer, system design questions and answers where almost 90% of the people are failing to answer, with detailed solutions, which are often missing from free online resources. A lot of people are claiming that these questions are coming in real interviews. So, grab them as soon as possible with both hands. Since these questions and answers covers basic to advanced interview questions and answers, that's why given 50 question and answers for each section, these questions and answers will be helpful for freshers 2 to 3 years experienced people and 5 or above years experienced people also for your interviews. You people can download all 6 PDFs in a single zip file from below given links.
Transition from identifying threats to understanding movement.
In Category 1, you learned how to recognize common threats as soon as they appear. Now we move one level deeper. Category 2 focuses on how attacks move through networks and why basic networking knowledge is critical for security interviews and SOC roles.
Category 2, Network Security, the How Does It Move phase.
This category tests whether you understand how attackers use networks to spread, hide, and intercept data. Interviewers ask these questions to see if you can connect basic networking concepts with real security risks without needing advanced protocols or deep theory.
Category 2 Scenarios, 5 scenarios.
1. The ping fail. You can ping 8.8.8.8, but google.com does not load. 2. The open port. A scan shows port 23 telnet is open on a server. 3. The firewall request. A manager asks to open RDP directly to the internet. 4. The DMZ question. Where should a public web server be placed? 5. The packet capture. ClearedX passwords appear in a Wireshark trace. These scenarios check whether you understand how data travels and how attackers intercept it.
Scenario 36. The ping works but Google doesn't load.
The interviewer asks, you can successfully ping 8.8.8.8, but when you try to open google.com in the browser, it doesn't load. What could be wrong from a security perspective?
What freshers usually say.
Most freshers answer, the internet is not working properly. This is a weak interview answer because it stops at the symptom and does not explain what part of the network is failing or how it could be abused.
The interview-winning SOC Analyst answer.
A strong answer separates connectivity from name resolution. 1. If pinging an IP works, basic network connectivity is fine. 2. If domain names do not resolve, the issue is likely DNS related. 3. From a security view, this could indicate DNS misconfiguration or a DNS poisoning attack redirecting traffic. Understanding DNS is critical because attackers often target name resolution.
Follow-up 1. Why is DNS an attractive target for attackers?
Answer: because DNS controls where users are sent. If attackers manipulate DNS, they can redirect users to fake or malicious websites without the user noticing.
Follow-up 2. How would you quickly confirm this is a DNS issue?
Answer: by trying to access the site using its IP address directly or checking DNS settings to see which DNS server is being used.
Follow-up 3. Curveball. What if only one user is affected, not everyone?
Answer: that suggests a local DNS setting or malicious change on that specific machine, not a global network outage.
Key takeaway.
Security problems don't always block the network completely. Sometimes they quietly redirect traffic, which is why understanding DNS behavior matters.
Up next, when an open port becomes an open door.
Next, we look at why finding a single open port during a scan can be a serious security red flag.
Scenario 37. The open port nobody noticed.
The interviewer asks, a routine network scan shows that port 23 telnet is open on a server. The application seems to work fine and nobody has complained. Why is this a security problem?
What freshers usually say.
Most freshers answer, we should close the port because it's not needed. This is a weak answer because it states the action, but not the reason why the port is dangerous in the first place.
The interview-winning SOC Analyst answer.
A strong answer explains the risk before the fix. 1. Port 23 is used by telnet, which sends data in clear text. 2. Any attacker on the network can sniff usernames and passwords. 3. The correct action is to disable telnet and use secure alternatives like SSH. Security is about how data travels, not just which ports are open.
Follow-up 1. Why is telnet considered insecure even on internal networks?
Answer: because internal networks can still be compromised. ClearedX credentials can be captured by anyone with network access.
Follow-up 2. How would you detect if telnet credentials were already stolen?
Answer: by reviewing network logs, monitoring for unusual logins, and checking for unexpected access patterns.
Follow-up 3. Curveball. What if the server is old and only supports telnet?
Answer: that is a major risk. The system should be isolated, upgraded, or replaced because legacy protocols create unavoidable security gaps.
Key takeaway.
An open port is not just a configuration detail. It defines how attackers can listen, intercept, and steal data.
Up next, when convenience overrides security.
Next, we examine a common request that seems harmless but creates serious exposure: opening remote access directly to the internet.
Scenario 38, the firewall rule request.
The interviewer asks, a manager says they need to access a company server from home and asks you to open port 3389, RDP, to the internet. It will make their work easier. What do you do?
What freshers usually say.
Most freshers answer, if the manager needs access, we can open the port and maybe set a strong password. This is a weak answer because it prioritizes convenience and ignores how frequently exposed RDP services are attacked.
The interview-winning SOC Analyst answer.
A strong answer explains why the request itself is a dangerous one. Opening RDP to the internet exposes the server to constant brute force and scanning attacks. 2. Even strong passwords can be cracked or leaked, especially without additional controls. 3. The correct solution is to require access through a VPN or secure remote access gateway. Security controls should reduce exposure, not expand it.
Follow-up 1. Why is RDP frequently targeted by attackers?
Answer: because it provides direct system access. Attackers continuously scan the internet for exposed RDP services to brute force or exploit them.
Follow-up 2. Would enabling MF on RDP make it safe to expose?
Answer: MF reduces risk but does not eliminate it. The service is still exposed and increases attack surface, so VPN-based access is preferred.
Follow-up 3. Curveball. What if the manager insists this is only temporary?
Answer: temporary exceptions often become permanent. Secure access should be designed correctly from the start, even for short-term needs.
Key takeaway.
Many breaches begin with well-intentioned access requests. Interviewers want to hear that you reduce attack surface, not just manage passwords.
Up next, where public services should and should not live.
Next, we examine where to place public-facing systems, so attackers cannot move deeper into the internal network.
Scenario 39. Where should the public web server live?
The interviewer asks, you need to deploy a public-facing web server. Should it be placed inside the internal network or somewhere else? Why?
What freshers usually say.
Most freshers answer, put it inside the internal network so it is protected by the firewall. This is a weak answer because it misunderstands how attackers move once a public service is compromised.
The interview-winning SOC Analyst answer.
A strong SOC answer explains isolation, not just protection. 1. Public-facing servers should be placed in a DMZ, demilitarized zone, not the internal network. 2. The DMZ acts as a buffer between the internet and internal systems. 3. If the web server is compromised, the attacker is contained and cannot easily reach internal resources. Security architecture is about limiting blast radius, not trusting firewalls alone.
Follow-up 1. What kind of systems usually belong in a DMZ?
Answer: public services like web servers, mail gateways, and reverse proxies that must be accessible from the internet.
Follow-up 2. Does placing a server in a DMZ make it completely safe?
Answer: no. The server can still be compromised, but the DMZ limits how far the attacker can move afterward.
Follow-up 3. Curveball. What if a small company says a DMZ is too complex?
Answer: even simple network segmentation provides protection. The principle of separation is more important than perfect design.
Key takeaway.
Public exposure should never equal internal trust. Interviewers want to hear that you design networks assuming compromise.
Up next, when passwords travel in plain text.
Next, we examine what it means when sensitive data appears unencrypted in network traffic.
Scenario 40. Cleartext passwords in a packet capture.
The interviewer asks, during a troubleshooting session, you capture network traffic using Wireshark and notice usernames and passwords visible in plain text. What does this indicate? And why is it dangerous?
What freshers usually say.
Most freshers answer, passwords should be encrypted, so this is bad. This is a weak answer because it states the obvious but does not explain which protocols cause this or how attackers exploit it.
The interview-winning SOC Analyst answer.
A strong SOC Analyst answer connects visibility to protocol behavior. 1. Seeing passwords in plain text indicates the use of insecure protocols like HTTP, FTP, or Telnet. 2. These protocols transmit credentials without encryption, allowing anyone on the network to sniff them. 3. The correct action is to replace them with secure alternatives such as HTTPS, SFTP, or SSH. Encryption protects data in transit, not just data at rest.
Follow-up 1. Why is this risk higher on public or shared networks?
Answer: because attackers can easily capture traffic on shared networks, making credential theft much easier.
Follow-up 2. Would a VPN solve this problem?
Answer: a VPN encrypts traffic between the device and the VPN server, reducing exposure, but applications should still use secure protocols end-to-end.
Follow-up 3. Curveball. What if this traffic is inside the company network?
Answer: internal networks are not inherently safe. Insider threats and compromised devices can still capture unencrypted traffic.
Key takeaway.
If you can read credentials in traffic, so can an attacker. Interviewers want to hear that you understand how protocol choice directly affects security.
Category 2 complete. Understanding how attacks move.
You've now seen how attackers exploit network behavior, misused ports, weak protocols, exposed services, and trust assumptions. This category tests whether you understand movement, not just malware.
Please check description or comment section of this video. I have given a lot of links for downloading 6 PDFs containing all types of most asked interview question and answers like scenario-based, technical-based, behavioral-based, real-world problem-solving, generally most asked, and system design. Required for your cybersecurity jobs interviews like Junior Cybersecurity Analyst jobs, Cybersecurity Analyst jobs, Cybersecurity SOC Analyst jobs, Cybersecurity GRC jobs, Cybersecurity CISO jobs, Cybersecurity Incident Responder jobs, Cybersecurity Vulnerability Analyst jobs, Cybersecurity Malware Analyst jobs, Cybersecurity Engineer jobs, Cybersecurity Architect jobs, Cybersecurity Manager jobs, Cybersecurity Consultant jobs, Cybersecurity Specialist jobs, etc., etc. These questions and answers are carefully curated by industry experts, saving you people hours of research and ensuring you people will have the most accurate and relevant answers. This PDFs includes scenario-based questions and answers, real-world problem solving, interview questions and answers where almost 80% of the people are failing to answer, system design questions and answers where almost 90% of the people are failing to answer, with detailed solutions, which are often missing from free online resources. A lot of people are claiming that these questions are coming in real interviews. So, grab them as soon as possible with both hands. Since these questions and answers covers basic to advanced interview questions and answers, that's why given 50 question and answers for each section, these questions and answers will be helpful for freshers, 2 to 3 years experienced people, and 5 or above years experienced people also for your interviews. You people can download all 6 PDFs in a single zip file from below given links.
Transition from networks to identity.
So far, we focused on how attacks enter and move through networks. Now we shift to a quieter but more common failure point: identity. Most real-world breaches don't start with malware, they start with valid credentials.
Category 3. Identity and access, IAM.
This category tests whether you understand who should have access, when they should have it, and why identity controls matter more than firewalls in modern environments. Interviewers use these scenarios to see if you think in terms of misuse, not just misuse prevention.
Category 3 scenarios, 5 scenarios.
Scenario 41, password reset caller, is it really the user? Scenario 42, the shared account everyone uses. Scenario 43, the leaver who still has access. Scenario 44, the MF a fatigue notification. Scenario 45, the just this once admin request. These scenarios test whether you protect access before attackers exploit trust.
Scenario 41, the password reset caller.
The interviewer asks, a user calls the help desk asking for a password reset. They sound confident and say they are locked out. How do you verify it's really them before resetting the password?
What freshers usually say.
Most freshers answer, ask for their username or employee ID and reset the password. This is a weak interview answer because attackers often already know basic employee details and rely on urgency to bypass verification.
The interview-winning SOC Analyst answer.
A strong answer shows identity verification and process discipline. 1. Verify the caller using predefined security questions or multi-factor identity checks. 2. Confirm the request through an out-of-band method, such as a callback to a registered number or corporate email. 3. Only reset the password after verification is completed and log the request for audit purposes. Identity verification prevents social engineering, not just account mistakes.
Follow-up 1. Why is urgency a red flag during password reset requests?
Answer: attackers often create pressure to rush verification. Legitimate users can wait, but attackers rely on shortcuts.
Follow-up 2. Why is logging password reset requests important?
Answer: logs provide traceability and help detect patterns of abuse or repeated attempts against multiple users.
Follow-up 3. Curveball. What if the caller claims to be a senior executive?
Answer: the same verification process applies to everyone. Executives are frequent targets, so skipping checks increases risk.
Key takeaway.
Most account compromises start with trust abuse, not technical exploits. Interviewers want to hear that you protect identity with process, not assumptions.
Up next, when everyone shares one login.
Next, we look at why shared accounts seem convenient, but quietly destroy accountability and security.
Scenario 42. The shared account everyone uses.
The interviewer asks, the marketing team uses a single shared account called marketing@company.com because it's convenient. Why is this a security problem?
What freshers usually say.
Most freshers answer, shared accounts are bad because many people use the same password. This is a weak interview answer because it only focuses on password exposure and misses the deeper security impact.
The interview-winning SOC Analyst answer.
A strong answer explains accountability and traceability. 1. Shared accounts remove individual accountability, making it impossible to know who performed an action. 2. If the account is compromised, all users are affected and investigation becomes difficult. 3. The correct approach is to use individual accounts with role-based access controls. Security depends on traceability, not just password strength.
Follow-up 1. Why is accountability important during incidents?
Answer: during investigations, knowing who did what and when is critical. Shared accounts hide responsibility and slow response.
Follow-up 2. Why do teams still prefer shared accounts?
Answer: because they seem easier to manage. However, convenience trades off directly against security and auditability.
Follow-up 3. Curveball. What if the shared account is read-only?
Answer: even read-only access can expose sensitive data. Individual identities are still needed for monitoring and auditing.
Key takeaway.
Shared accounts break one of the most important security principles, knowing who did what. Interviewers want to hear that you protect accountability.
Up next, when access isn't revoked in time.
Next, we examine what happens when an employee leaves, but their access does not.
Scenario 43. The employee who left but still has access.
The interviewer asks, an employee has been terminated, but later you discover their account is still active. What went wrong and why is this dangerous?
What freshers usually say.
Most freshers answer, IT forgot to disable the account. This is a weak interview answer because it treats the issue as a simple mistake and ignores the process failure behind it.
The interview-winning SOC Analyst answer.
A strong answer explains timing, process, and risk. 1. Account deprovisioning should be automatic and immediate when an employee leaves. 2. Active accounts after termination create insider threat risk and legal exposure. 3. Proper offboarding requires coordination between HR, IT, and security. Access must be removed before trust is revoked, not after.
Follow-up 1. Why is immediate access removal critical during termination?
Answer: because emotional or disgruntled users may misuse access if it remains active even briefly.
Follow-up 2. Why shouldn't access be removed hours later?
Answer: even a short delay gives an opportunity for data theft or sabotage.
Follow-up 3. Curveball. What if HR delays informing IT?
Answer: that indicates a broken offboarding process. Security depends on timely communication, not manual reminders.
Key takeaway.
Most breaches involving former employees are process failures, not technical ones. Interviewers want to hear that you understand offboarding as a security control.
Up next, when MFA becomes the attack vector.
Next, we examine how attackers abuse MFA itself, instead of bypassing it.
Scenario 44. The unexpected MFA notification.
The interviewer asks, a user receives multiple MFA push notifications on their phone, but they did not try to log in. What is happening and what should be done?
What freshers usually say.
Most freshers answer, tell the user to deny the MFA request. This is a weak interview answer because it treats the symptom and ignores the attack pattern behind repeated MFA prompts.
The interview-winning SOC Analyst answer.
A strong answer explains both the attack and the response one. This is an MFA fatigue or MFA bombing attack where attackers spam login attempts hoping the user accepts one. 2. The user's credentials are likely already compromised and must be reset immediately. 3. Additional controls such as number matching or rate limiting MFA attempts should be enabled. MFA is a control, not a guarantee. How it's implemented matters.
Follow-up 1. Why do attackers use MFA fatigue instead of bypassing MFA?
Answer, because humans make mistakes. Attackers rely on frustration or confusion to get one approval.
Follow-up 2. Why is a password reset required even if the user denied the request?
Answer, because the attacker already has the password and will keep trying until access is granted.
Follow-up 3. Curveball. What if the user accidentally approved one request?
Answer, that confirms account compromise. The session must be terminated immediately and the incident escalated.
Key takeaway.
Modern attacks target human behavior, not just technology. Interviewers want to hear that you recognize misuse of security controls.
Up next, when access requests sound harmless.
Next, we examine a request that sounds reasonable, but quietly violates the principle of least privilege.
Scenario 45. The just this once admin request.
The interviewer asks, a junior developer asks for local admin rights just to install one tool and promises they'll remove it later. What do?
What freshers usually say.
Most freshers answer, if it's only temporary, we can give admin access and remove it later. This is a weak interview answer because it relies on trust and manual follow-up instead of security controls.
The interview-winning SOC Analyst answer.
A strong SOC Analyst answer enforces least privilege while enabling work 1. Admin access should not be granted permanently or informally, even for short tasks. 2. If elevated access is required, use time-bound or task-based privilege elevation. 3. All privilege changes should be logged and automatically revoked after completion. Least privilege is about reducing risk over time, not blocking productivity.
Follow-up 1. Why are temporary admin requests risky?
Answer, because temporary access is often forgotten and becomes permanent, increasing attack surface over time.
Follow-up 2. Why is logging privilege changes important?
Answer, logs provide accountability and help detect abuse or mistakes involving elevated access.
Follow-up 3. Curveball. What if the tool truly requires admin rights to install?
Answer, security can install the tool centrally or approve controlled, time-limited elevation, instead of granting full admin access.
Key takeaway.
Most security failures come from small exceptions that pile up. Interviewers want to hear that you enforce least privilege consistently, not emotionally.
Category 3 complete. Identity is the new perimeter.
You've now seen how identity failures happen: weak verification, shared access, delayed offboarding, MFA abuse, and privilege creep. These scenarios test whether you protect trust as carefully as systems.
Please check description or comment section of this video. I have given a lot of links for downloading 6 PDFs containing all types of most asked interview question and answers like scenario-based, technical-based, behavioral-based, real-world problem-solving, generally most asked, and system design. Required for your cybersecurity jobs interviews like Junior Cybersecurity Analyst jobs, Cybersecurity Analyst jobs, Cybersecurity SOC Analyst jobs, Cybersecurity GRC jobs, Cybersecurity CISO jobs, Cybersecurity Incident Responder jobs, Cybersecurity Vulnerability Analyst jobs, Cybersecurity Malware Analyst jobs, Cybersecurity Engineer jobs, Cybersecurity Architect jobs, Cybersecurity Manager jobs, Cybersecurity Consultant jobs, Cybersecurity Specialist jobs, etc., etc. These questions and answers are carefully curated by industry experts, saving you people hours of research and ensuring you people will have the most accurate and relevant answers. This PDFs includes scenario-based questions and answers, real-world problem solving. Interview questions and answers where almost 80% of the people are failing to answer. System design questions and answers where almost 90% of the people are failing to answer, with detailed solutions, which are often missing from free online resources. A lot of people are claiming that these questions are coming in real interviews. So, grab them as soon as possible with both hands. Since these questions and answers covers basic to advanced interview questions and answers, that's why given 50 question and answers for each section. These questions and answers will be helpful for freshers, 2 to 3 years experienced people, and 5 or above years experienced people also for your interviews. You people can download all 6 PDFs in a single zip file from below given links.
Transition from identity to incident response.
So far, you've learned how attacks enter through people, credentials, and access mistakes. Now we move into the core responsibility of a SOC analyst, responding correctly once an alert fires. In this section, the focus shifts from prevention to action.
Category 4, Incident Response, the action phase.
This category tests how you react under pressure. Interviewers want to see if you can verify alerts, preserve evidence, and avoid making incidents worse through panic or guesswork.
Category 4 Scenarios, 5 scenarios.
Scenario 46, malware alert on a legitimate file, false positive. Scenario 47, large data upload at an unusual time. Scenario 48, chain of custody for a compromised laptop. Scenario 49, missing logs during an investigation. Scenario 50, suspicious activity by a resigning employee. These scenarios test judgment, verification, and discipline during active incidents.
Scenario 46, malware alert on a legitimate file.
The interviewer asks, a security alert reports malware detected on a system, but the flagged file appears to be a legitimate Windows or PowerShell file. What do you do?
What freshers usually say.
Most freshers answer, delete the file immediately and clean the system. This is a weak interview answer because it assumes the alert is always correct and skips verification.
The interview-winning SOC analyst answer.
A strong SOC analyst answer focuses on validation before action 1. Verify whether the alert is a false positive by checking the file hash against trusted sources. 2. Analyze the file using multiple tools such as VirusTotal or internal sandboxing systems. 3. Confirm file behavior and context before taking remediation steps. Good analysts validate alerts before reacting.
Follow-up 1. Why are false positives common with legitimate tools like PowerShell?
Answer, because attackers often abuse legitimate tools. Security software may flag them based on behavior rather than intent.
Follow-up 2. Why is deleting the file immediately risky?
Answer, it may remove evidence and disrupt legitimate system operations without confirming a real threat.
Follow-up 3. Curveball. What if the alert keeps firing repeatedly?
Answer, that suggests either a misconfigured rule or repeated suspicious behavior. Both require investigation, not blind cleanup.
Key takeaway.
SOC work is not about trusting alerts blindly. Interviewers want to see that you can balance caution with verification.
Up next, when data moves at the wrong time.
Next, we examine how unusual data movement can indicate a serious security incident.
Scenario 47. Large data upload at 2 a.m.
The interviewer asks, you notice that a user account is uploading 5 gigabytes of data to Google Drive at 2 a.m. The user has not reported anything. Is this normal, and what do you do?
What freshers usually say.
Most freshers answer, ask the user if they are working late or ignore it if there are no alerts. This is a weak interview answer because it delays investigation and assumes unusual behavior is harmless.
The interview-winning SOC analyst answer.
A strong SOC analyst answer treats unusual behavior as a signal one. Large data transfers at unusual times should be treated as potential data exfiltration. 2. Immediately investigate what data is being uploaded and whether it contains sensitive information. 3. Correlate activity with user role, device, and recent authentication events, and escalate if suspicious. Time and volume anomalies are early warning signs, not confirmations.
Follow-up 1. Why is timing important when analyzing data transfers?
Answer, because attackers often operate outside normal business hours to avoid detection and response.
Follow-up 2. Why is checking the user's role critical?
Answer, some roles legitimately move large files, while others should never do so. Context determines risk.
Follow-up 3. Curveball. What if the user says they were backing up personal files?
Answer: company systems should not be used for personal backups. The activity still requires review and possible policy enforcement.
Key takeaway.
Not all breaches trigger malware alerts. Many start with unusual but quiet data movement.
Up next, preserving evidence without making it worse.
Next, we examine how improper handling of compromised devices can destroy critical evidence.
Scenario 48. The compromised laptop and chain of custody.
The interviewer asks, you are handed a laptop suspected to be compromised. Do you power it on to check what happened or do something else? Why?
What freshers usually say.
Most freshers answer, turn it on and check the logs or run antivirus. This is a weak interview answer because it risks altering or destroying evidence before it can be properly examined.
The interview-winning SOC Analyst answer.
A strong SOC Analyst answer focuses on evidence preservation. 1. Do not power on or interact with the device unless instructed by incident response or forensics. 2. Preserve the device in its current state to maintain chain of custody. 3. Document who handled the device, when, and why before transferring it to the forensics team. Evidence integrity matters as much as threat containment.
Follow-up 1. Why is powering on the device risky?
Answer: because system startup can overwrite memory, modify files, or trigger malware cleanup routines that destroy evidence.
Follow-up 2. What does chain of custody mean in simple terms?
Answer: it is a record showing who handled the device and ensuring evidence was not tampered with.
Follow-up 3. Curveball. What if the user insists they need the laptop immediately?
Answer: security takes priority. A replacement device should be issued while the compromised one is preserved for investigation.
Key takeaway.
Good incident response protects evidence first. Interviewers want to hear that you know when not to touch a system.
Up next, when logs are missing.
Next, we examine what it means when critical logs are unavailable during an investigation.
Scenario 49. The missing logs during an investigation.
The interviewer asks, you are investigating a suspected incident, but when you try to review authentication logs from yesterday, they are missing. What could be the reason, and how do you respond?
What freshers usually say.
Most freshers answer, the logs were probably deleted by mistake. This is a weak interview answer because it treats missing logs as an accident and ignores both policy and attacker behavior.
The interview-winning SOC Analyst answer.
A strong SOC Analyst answer considers both operational and adversarial causes. 1. First, check log retention policies to see if logs expired due to misconfiguration or short retention windows. 2. Consider the possibility of log tampering or deletion by an attacker attempting to hide activity. 3. Escalate the incident, preserve remaining logs, and review alternate log sources such as SIM, backups, or endpoint telemetry. Missing logs are a signal, not just a gap.
Follow-up 1. Why are log retention policies important for security?
Answer: they ensure enough historical data exists to investigate incidents. Short retention windows can hide attacks even without malicious intent.
Follow-up 2. Why would attackers delete logs?
Answer: to erase evidence of their actions and slow down or block investigations.
Follow-up 3. Curveball. What if logs are missing only on one server?
Answer: that increases suspicion of targeted tampering. A single system gap is more concerning than a global retention issue.
Key takeaway.
Logs are a security control, not just troubleshooting data. Interviewers want to hear that you treat missing logs as a potential incident.
Up next, when a trusted insider becomes the risk.
Next, we examine how insider threats appear and why behavior change matters more than malware alerts.
Scenario 50. The resigning employee downloading data.
The interviewer asks, an employee who has submitted their resignation is suddenly downloading large amounts of client data. There are no malware alerts. What does this indicate, and what should you do?
What freshers usually say.
Most freshers answer, they are probably preparing handover documents or backups. This is a weak interview answer because it assumes good intent and ignores one of the most common real-world insider threat patterns.
The interview-winning SOC Analyst answer.
A strong SOC Analyst answer treats this as a high-risk behavioral signal. 1. Sudden data access after resignation is a classic insider threat indicator. 2. Immediately restrict or monitor the user's access based on policy and escalate to security and HR. 3. Preserve logs and evidence to understand what data was accessed and whether it was exfiltrated. Insider threats rarely look technical, they look behavioral.
Follow-up 1. Why are insider threats hard to detect?
Answer: because insiders use valid credentials and normal access paths, making their actions look legitimate at first glance.
Follow-up 2. Why involve HR in the situation?
Answer: because access decisions during resignation must follow legal and company policy, not just technical judgment.
Follow-up 3. Curveball. What if the employee claims the data is for future reference?
Answer: company data should not leave the organization. Intent does not override policy or risk.
Key takeaway.
Not all threats come from outside. Interviewers want to hear that you recognize risk based on behavior, not just alerts.
Category 4 complete. Acting calmly under pressure.
You've now covered how SOC analysts verify alerts, preserve evidence, handle missing data, and respond to insider threats. These scenarios test judgment, not memorization.
Please check description or comment section of this video. I have given a lot of links for downloading 6 PDFs containing all types of most asked interview question and answers like scenario-based, technical-based, behavioral-based, real-world problem-solving, generally most asked, and system design. Required for your cybersecurity jobs interviews like Junior Cybersecurity Analyst jobs, Cybersecurity Analyst jobs, Cybersecurity SOC Analyst jobs, Cybersecurity GRC jobs, Cybersecurity CISO jobs, Cybersecurity Incident Responder jobs, Cybersecurity Vulnerability Analyst jobs, Cybersecurity Malware Analyst jobs, Cybersecurity Engineer jobs, Cybersecurity Architect jobs, Cybersecurity Manager jobs, Cybersecurity Consultant jobs, Cybersecurity Specialist jobs, etc., etc. These questions and answers are carefully curated by industry experts, saving you people hours of research and ensuring you people will have the most accurate and relevant answers. This PDFs includes scenario-based questions and answers, real-world problem solving, interview questions and answers where almost 80% of the people are failing to answer, system design questions and answers where almost 90% of the people are failing to answer, with detailed solutions, which are often missing from free online resources. A lot of people are claiming that these questions are coming in real interviews. So, grab them as soon as possible with both hands. Since these questions and answers covers basic to advanced interview questions and answers, that's why given 50 question and answers for each section, these questions and answers will be helpful for freshers, 2 to 3 years experienced people, and 5 or above years experienced people also for your interviews. You people can download all 6 PDFs in a single zip file from below given links.
Transition from incident response to security tooling.
Up to this point, every scenario focused on decisions and judgment. Now we shift to the tools that support those decisions. Category 5 tests whether you understand what security tools actually do in the real world, not just their definitions.
Category 5. Tools and technology, the hard skills layer.
Interviewers use these questions to separate candidates who memorize tool names from those who understand why the tools exist. You are not expected to be an expert, only to know the purpose and limits of each tool.
Category 5 scenarios, 5 scenarios.
Scenario 51, what is a SIM actually used for? Scenario 52, EDR versus traditional antivirus. Scenario 53, a critical vulnerability scan finding. Scenario 54, sending passwords securely. Scenario 55, verifying file integrity with hashes. These scenarios test understanding of tools as enablers, not magic solutions.
Scenario 51, what is a SIM actually used for?
The interviewer asks, you mentioned SIM tools like Splunk or Microsoft Sentinel on your resume. What are they actually used for in day-to-day security operations?
What freshers usually say.
Most freshers answer, a SIM collects logs and shows alerts. This is a weak interview answer because it describes what the tool does technically, but not why security teams depend on it.
The interview-winning SOC analyst answer.
A strong answer explains purpose, not just features. 1. A SIM centralizes logs from many systems so activity can be analyzed in one place. 2. It correlates events across systems to detect suspicious patterns that would be invisible in isolated logs. 3. Security teams use SIM to investigate incidents, not just to generate alerts. A SIM is a visibility platform, not an alarm bell.
Follow-up 1. Why can't we rely on logs from individual systems?
Answer: because attacks often span multiple systems. Looking at one log source at a time hides the bigger picture.
Follow-up 2. Does a SIM stop attacks by itself?
Answer: no. A SIM detects and helps investigate. Humans still decide and respond.
Follow-up 3. Curveball. What happens if a SIM is poorly configured?
Answer: it can create alert fatigue or miss real threats. A SIM is only as useful as its rules and data sources.
Key takeaway.
Interviewers want to hear that you understand why tools exist. Knowing the purpose of a SIM matters more than naming vendors.
Up next, why antivirus alone is no longer enough.
Next, we examine how modern threats bypass traditional antivirus and why EDR tools exist.
Scenario 52. Why antivirus alone is not enough.
The interviewer asks, why do modern organizations use EDR tools when they already have traditional antivirus installed?
What freshers usually say.
Most freshers answer, antivirus detects viruses, and EDR is just a more advanced antivirus. This is a weak interview answer because it treats both tools as the same thing and ignores how modern attacks actually work.
The interview-winning SOC Analyst answer.
A strong SOC Analyst answer explains the difference in detection approach. 1. Traditional antivirus relies mainly on known signatures and struggles with new or fileless attacks. 2. EDR focuses on behavior, tracking what processes do over time instead of just what files look like. 3. Security teams use EDR to investigate incidents, trace attack timelines, and respond quickly. Modern attacks hide in behavior, not files.
Follow-up 1. What is an example of a fileless attack?
Answer: an attacker using built-in tools like PowerShell to execute malicious commands without dropping a traditional malware file.
Follow-up 2. Does EDR replace antivirus completely?
Answer: no. They work together. Antivirus handles known threats, while EDR detects suspicious behavior and supports investigation.
Follow-up 3. Curveball. What if EDR generates too many alerts?
Answer: that usually means tuning is needed. Too many alerts reduce effectiveness, but disabling EDR increases risk.
Key takeaway.
Interviewers want to hear that you understand why security tools evolved. EDR exists because attackers evolved.
Up next, when a scan finds a critical vulnerability.
Next, we examine how to respond when vulnerability scanning tools report severe findings.
Scenario 53. A vulnerability scan finds a critical issue.
The interviewer asks, a vulnerability scan, for example Nessus, reports a critical vulnerability on a server. What do you do next?
What freshers usually say.
Most freshers answer, apply the patch immediately. This is a weak interview answer because it ignores business impact, false positives, and the need to understand what the vulnerability actually affects.
The interview-winning SOC Analyst answer.
A strong SOC Analyst answer balances security with operational reality. 1. First, validate the finding to confirm it is real and applicable to the system. 2. Assess the risk by understanding exposure, exploitability, and whether the system is internet-facing. 3. Coordinate patching with IT and business teams, prioritizing based on risk rather than severity label alone. Critical does not always mean urgent without context.
Follow-up 1. Why can vulnerability scans produce false positives?
Answer: because scanners rely on signatures and banners. A system may appear vulnerable even if compensating controls are in place.
Follow-up 2. Why is coordination important before patching?
Answer: patching without planning can cause outages. Security must reduce risk without breaking critical services.
Follow-up 3. Curveball. What if the patch is not available yet?
Answer: temporary mitigation such as configuration changes, access restrictions, or monitoring should be applied until a patch is released.
Key takeaway.
Vulnerability management is about prioritization and communication, not just patching everything instantly.
Up next, how to share passwords securely.
Next, we examine why sending passwords through email or chat creates unnecessary risk.
Scenario 54. Sending passwords securely.
The interviewer asks, you need to share a password with a colleague so they can access a system. How do you do it securely?
What freshers usually say.
Most freshers answer, I would email the password or send it on Teams or WhatsApp. This is a weak interview answer because emails and chat tools are often logged, stored, or compromised.
The interview-winning SOC Analyst answer.
A strong SOC Analyst answer focuses on minimizing exposure. 1. Never send passwords in plain text over email or chat. 2. Use a secure password sharing method such as an encrypted password manager or a one-time secret link. 3. Share the password and the access channel separately whenever possible. If a password must be shared, it must be short-lived and protected.
Follow-up 1. Why is email a bad option for sharing passwords?
Answer: emails are stored long-term and can be accessed later by attackers if an account is compromised.
Follow-up 2. What is a one-time secret link?
Answer: it is a secure link that allows the password to be viewed only once and then automatically expires.
Follow-up 3. Curveball. What if the colleague insists on email because it's faster?
Answer: security policy should be followed even if it takes slightly longer. Convenience should never override security.
Key takeaway.
Password handling is about reducing exposure time and attack surface.
Up next, verifying file integrity with hashes.
Next, we examine how hashing helps confirm that files have not been altered or tampered with.
Scenario 55. Verifying file integrity with hashes.
The interviewer asks, you download a software installer from the internet. How do you verify that the file has not been tampered with or corrupted?
What freshers usually say.
Most freshers answer, if it downloads successfully and installs, it should be fine. This is a weak interview answer because successful download does not guarantee integrity or authenticity.
The interview-winning SOC Analyst answer.
A strong SOC Analyst answer explains verification, not trust one. Generate a hash of the downloaded file using an algorithm like SHA-256. 2. Compare the generated hash with the official hash provided by the vendor. 3. If the hashes match exactly, the file has not been altered in transit. Hashes verify integrity, not intent.
Follow-up 1. Why shouldn't we rely only on antivirus scans?
Answer: antivirus may miss modified or new malicious files. Hash comparison confirms the file is exactly what the vendor released.
Follow-up 2. Why is SHA-256 preferred over MD5?
Answer: MD5 is vulnerable to collisions, while SHA-256 is significantly more secure and trusted.
Follow-up 3. Curveball. What if the vendor does not provide a hash?
Answer: that itself is a risk signal. Files should only be downloaded from trusted sources that provide integrity verification.
Key takeaway.
Hashing gives you mathematical proof that a file is unchanged. Trust in security is verified, not assumed.
Category 5 complete. Understanding tools without memorizing them.
You've now covered how core security tools actually support detection, investigation, and safe operations. Interviewers look for this level of understanding, not tool name memorization.
Please check description or comment section of this video. I have given a lot of links for downloading 6 PDFs containing all types of most asked interview question and answers like scenario-based, technical-based, behavioral-based, real-world problem-solving, generally most asked, and system design. Required for your cybersecurity jobs interviews like Junior Cybersecurity Analyst jobs, Cybersecurity Analyst jobs, Cybersecurity SOC Analyst jobs, Cybersecurity GRC jobs, Cybersecurity CISO jobs, Cybersecurity Incident Responder jobs, Cybersecurity Vulnerability Analyst jobs, Cybersecurity Malware Analyst jobs, Cybersecurity Engineer jobs, Cybersecurity Architect jobs, Cybersecurity Manager jobs, Cybersecurity Consultant jobs, Cybersecurity Specialist jobs, etc., etc. These questions and answers are carefully curated by industry experts, saving you people hours of research and ensuring you people will have the most accurate and relevant answers. This PDFs includes scenario-based questions and answers, real-world problem solving, interview questions and answers where almost 80% of the people are failing to answer, system design questions and answers where almost 90% of the people are failing to answer, with detailed solutions, which are often missing from free online resources. A lot of people are claiming that these questions are coming in real interviews. So, grab them as soon as possible with both hands. Since these questions and answers covers basic to advanced interview questions and answers, that's why given 50 question and answers for each section, these questions and answers will be helpful for freshers, 2 to 3 years experienced people, and 5 or above years experienced people also for your interviews. You people can download all 6 PDFs in a single zip file from below given links.
Transition from tools to rules.
So far, you've learned how security teams detect threats and use tools to respond safely. The final category focuses on something just as important: rules, policies, and human behavior. Most real-world breaches happen not because tools failed, but because rules were ignored.
Category 6, Governance and Policy, the rules layer.
Interviewers use these scenarios to test common sense, policy awareness, and risk thinking. You are not expected to quote policies word for word, only to show that you understand why rules exist and when they must be enforced.
Category 6 Scenarios, 5 scenarios.
Scenario 56, using personal devices for work BYOD. Scenario 57, oversharing on social media. Scenario 58, confidential data found on a public share. Scenario 59, disaster recovery and RTO confusion. Scenario 60, unescorted visitors in the office tailgating. These scenarios test judgment, responsibility, and respect for policy.
Scenario 56, using personal devices for work, BYOD.
The interviewer asks, an employee wants to use their personal mobile phone to access work email and company files. Is this allowed, and what are the security concerns?
What freshers usually say.
Most freshers answer, it should be fine if the phone has a password. This is a weak interview answer because a simple screen lock does not protect company data if the device is lost, stolen, or compromised.
The interview-winning SOC Analyst answer.
A strong SOC Analyst answer balances convenience with control. 1. Personal devices can be allowed only under a formal BYOD policy. 2. The device must be managed using MDM to enforce encryption, screen locks, and remote wipe. 3. Company data should be separated from personal data to reduce risk. BYOD is a risk decision, not a default permission.
Follow-up 1. Why is MDM important for BYOD?
Answer: MDM allows the company to enforce security controls and wipe company data if the device is lost or the employee leaves.
Follow-up 2. What is the risk if BYOD is unmanaged?
Answer: sensitive data can leak if the device is compromised, shared, or connected to insecure networks.
Follow-up 3. Curveball. What if the employee refuses device management?
Answer: then BYOD access should not be granted. Personal preference cannot override security policy.
Key takeaway.
BYOD can improve productivity, but only when security controls protect company data.
Scenario 57. Oversharing on social media.
The interviewer asks, an employee posts a photo on Instagram showing their desk, and in the background you can clearly see the server room door and access badge reader. Is this a security issue?
What freshers usually say.
Most freshers answer, it's just a photo. No passwords or systems are shown. This is a weak interview answer because attackers use small details to build reconnaissance, not just obvious secrets.
The interview-winning SOC Analyst answer.
A strong SOC Analyst answer explains indirect risk. 1. Photos can reveal physical layouts, access controls, and security posture. 2. Attackers use social media for reconnaissance before physical or social engineering attacks. 3. Employees should be trained on social media policies and what not to share. Security failures often start with oversharing, not hacking.
Follow-up 1. Why is reconnaissance dangerous?
Answer: because it allows attackers to plan targeted attacks using real internal information.
Follow-up 2. Should employees be banned from social media?
Answer: no. Awareness and clear policy are more effective than outright bans.
Follow-up 3. Curveball. What if the post was already public for days?
Answer: it should still be reported and removed. Past exposure does not eliminate future risk.
Key takeaway.
Attackers gather intelligence from places employees least expect, including social media.
Up next, when confidential data appears in the wrong place.
Next, we examine how to respond when sensitive information is exposed internally.
Scenario 58. Confidential data found on a public share.
The interviewer asks, you discover a document clearly marked confidential stored on a shared drive that many employees can access. What do you do?
What freshers usually say.
Most freshers answer, I would delete the file. This is a weak interview answer because deleting evidence removes visibility into how the data was exposed and who accessed it.
The interview-winning SOC Analyst answer.
A strong SOC Analyst answer focuses on containment and understanding impact. 1. Restrict access to the file immediately instead of deleting it. 2. Identify who uploaded the file and who accessed it. 3. Notify data owners and follow the organization's data handling and incident process. Data exposure must be understood before it is cleaned up.
Follow-up 1. Why not delete the file immediately?
Answer: deleting removes auditability and makes it impossible to assess exposure or intent.
Follow-up 2. Is this always a security incident?
Answer: it depends on sensitivity and access, but it should always be treated as a potential incident until reviewed.
Follow-up 3. Curveball. What if the file was shared accidentally?
Answer: accidental exposure still carries risk. Intent does not reduce impact.
Key takeaway.
Security incidents are about impact and exposure, not just intent.
Up next, disaster recovery and RTO confusion.
Next, we look at how misunderstandings around recovery time can cause major business risk.
Scenario 59. Disaster recovery and RTO confusion.
The interviewer asks, a server room floods and systems go down. Management asks how long it will take to recover. Someone says the RTO is 1 hour, so everything should be back in 1 hour. Is that correct?
What freshers usually say.
Most freshers answer, yes, RTO means systems will be back within that time. This is a weak interview answer because it treats RTO as a guarantee instead of a planning target.
The interview-winning SOC Analyst answer.
A strong SOC Analyst answer explains expectation versus reality. 1. RTO, recovery time objective, is a target, not a promise. 2. Actual recovery depends on backups, damage level, and recovery processes. 3. Clear communication is required so the business understands realistic recovery timelines. RTO sets expectations. It does not eliminate risk.
Follow-up 1. What is the difference between RTO and RPO?
Answer: RTO is how long recovery should take, while RPO defines how much data loss is acceptable.
Follow-up 2. Who decides RTO values?
Answer: business stakeholders define RTO based on impact, with input from IT and security.
Follow-up 3. Curveball. What if recovery exceeds the RTO?
Answer: it should be documented and reviewed so recovery plans can be improved.
Key takeaway.
Disaster recovery is about planning and communication, not guarantees.
Up next, physical security still matters.
Finally, we examine a simple situation that causes real-world breaches every day.
Scenario 60. Unescorted visitors and tailgating.
The interviewer asks, you notice a delivery person walking through the office without a badge or escort. They say they are just dropping something off. What should you do?
What freshers usually say.
Most freshers answer, it's probably fine. They look legitimate. This is a weak interview answer because physical security relies on verification, not assumptions.
The interview-winning SOC Analyst answer.
A strong SOC Analyst answer focuses on policy and safety. 1. Politely challenge and verify the visitor's purpose. 2. Ensure they are escorted according to company policy. 3. Report the incident so security awareness can be reinforced. Physical access is often the easiest way into secure environments.
Follow-up 1. Why is tailgating dangerous?
Answer: because it bypasses access controls without triggering alarms.
Follow-up 2. What if you feel uncomfortable challenging someone?
Answer: you should contact security or follow escalation procedures rather than ignoring the situation.
Follow-up 3. Curveball. What if the visitor becomes upset?
Answer: safety comes first. Follow security procedures and avoid confrontation.
Key takeaway.
Strong security culture depends on people following simple rules consistently.
Series conclusion. From fresher to hire ready.
You've now seen 60 real-world security plus interview scenarios, moving from basic awareness to practical judgment. These answers are not about memorization. They show calm thinking, process awareness, and trustworthiness. That is what interviewers hire for.
Please check description or comment section of this video. I have given a lot of links for downloading 6 PDFs containing all types of most asked interview question and answers like scenario-based, technical-based, behavioral-based, real-world problem-solving, generally most asked, and system design. Required for your cybersecurity jobs interviews like Junior Cybersecurity Analyst jobs, Cybersecurity Analyst jobs, Cybersecurity SOC Analyst jobs, Cybersecurity GRC jobs, Cybersecurity CISO jobs, Cybersecurity Incident Responder jobs, Cybersecurity Vulnerability Analyst jobs, Cybersecurity Malware Analyst jobs, Cybersecurity Engineer jobs. cybersecurity architect jobs, cybersecurity manager jobs, cybersecurity consultant jobs, cybersecurity specialist jobs, etc., etc. These questions and answers are carefully curated by industry experts, saving you people hours of research and ensuring you people will have the most accurate and relevant answers. This PDFs includes scenario-based questions and answers, real-world problem solving. Interview questions and answers where almost 80% of the people are failing to answer. System design questions and answers where almost 90% of the people are failing to answer, with detailed solutions, which are often missing from free online resources. A lot of people are claiming that these questions are coming in real interviews. So, grab them as soon as possible with both hands. Since these questions and answers covers basic to advanced interview questions and answers, that's why given 50 question and answers for each section. These questions and answers will be helpful for freshers, 2 to 3 years experienced people, and 5 or above years experienced people also for your interviews. You people can download all 6 PDFs in a single zip file from below given links.
For more exciting tips, tricks, and more importantly, for valuable insights of interviews, please share, like, and subscribe to my channel. It has a lot of valuable information about various insights of interviews. It has a wide range of real-world portfolio projects of various technologies for interviews, and it has wide range of most asked interview questions and answers of various technologies like data science, SAP, AWS, DevOps, and full-stack web development, and more. That will be useful during interviews. It has a wide range of most asked interview questions and answers and real-world portfolio projects of various technologies for freshers, for 2 to 3 years, experienced candidates, and for 5 or above years, experienced candidates to test their skills by knowing most asked interview questions and make themselves ready for interviews.